CNN pundit Chris Cillizza did a segment where he talks about how maybe this time Senate Republicans will finally break with Donald Trump. And he really reiterated one of the most annoying themes of the Trump era, which is this idea of the good Republican and the bad Republican. And Trump is the nefarious force dragging all the Republicans in a bad direction, but there's still hope that some of the Republicans will come out of this stronger and will dissent from Trump. Let's see his rant.
The reason for this sort of hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil approach by the vast majority of Senate Republicans to the Mattis statement is, to put it plainly, political cowardice. Every single Republican senator and House member is intimately aware of what happened to then Arizona Senator Jeff Flake when he spoke out in 2017 against Trump. Trump attacked him, claimed that he was not really a Republican. Now, sidebar on that. Flake had one of the most conservative voting records in the House and the Senate during his time there, almost at the tippity top, end sidebar. Now, Flake's numbers did plummet, forcing him to choose retirement over a near certain primary loss fueled by his willingness to say that Trump was doing long-term damage to the Republican Party. Trump, as he does, celebrated Flake's retirement and took credit for it. He also suggested that if anyone else got out of line, any of you guys get out of line, they'd get the same treatment. And when Michigan Republican Congressman Justin Amash, who, like Flake, had a near-perfect conservative voting record in Congress, came out in favor of Trump's impeachment, the president savaged him, leading Amash to leave the Republican Party entirely. And so, with very limited exceptions, Murkowski, Amash, and Utah Senator Mitt Romney being the most prominent, almost no Republican senator or House member has dared step out of the Trump line. And that's not because they agree with the president. It's because they apparently value getting reelected, or at least not having to beat back a Trump-inspired primary challenge, more than they care about, in Murkowski's own words, the courage of our own convictions. After all, some of Trump's most vocal critics within the party when he was running for president in 2016 have, now, with no real explanation as to why, pivoted, into one of his most ardent defenders.
I think he's a kook. I think he's crazy. I think he's unfit for office.
Everything in Donald's world is about Donald. And he combines being a pathological liar.
Donald Trump is a delusional narcissist and an orange-faced windbag, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul said of Donald Trump in 2016. What explains that transformation, if not pure political calculation? The answer is, well, you already know what the answer is. I just said it, it's pure political calculation. History very rarely looks back kindly on those who put personal political gain and personal ambition over doing what you know is right. At some point, whether next year or in early 2025, Donald Trump will no longer be president or the leader of the Republican Party. And on that day, and a lot of days after it, Republican elected officials will have to look back at the past 4 or 8 years and ask themselves whether they stood on the courage of their convictions or the cravenness of their political aspirations. At the moment, that bit of introspection will likely leave a large majority of Republicans wishing they had taken a very different course.
He's such an unsophisticated thinker. I mean, it really is incredible to watch him do these rants as if he's saying anything that's insightful. So the whole underlying theme here is that, like, Trump is this unique Republican evil, and then there are these some good Republicans who say, I cannot abide, sir, and so they break with Trump, and then the other ones are just, you know, craven political characters who are like, I must follow along with our leader because I want to continue to get reelected, and because, you know, he's the head of the party. And that simplistic breakdown is so pathetic because it's effectively arguing that people like Jeff Flake, like, oh, he's such a hero for, you know, dissenting against Trump, and he deserves so much adoration. Now, here's the reality. The people in the Republican Party who are dissenting from Trump, they're doing it not really for any kind of, you know, moral courage that they might have. They're doing it because, number one, they really disagree with the optics of Trump and his lack of decorum and civility, and the fact that he's got like no filter and he's embarrassing and he tweets a lot. And so they don't like the fact that he doesn't know how to keep up the BS show in Washington. Okay? That's one of the reasons they're dissenting from him. And the other reason is, in the case of a guy like Jeff Flake, he knows damn well that there's this giant media industrial complex willing to support him. It's not brave when all of polite society is like, hey, come join us over here and we'll pretend you're a hero. He instantly, overnight, became a favorite of MSNBC and CNN. Look at guys like Bill Kristol, a neoconservative war criminal who now has been fully rehabilitated by establishment media types, who's the darling of CNN and MSNBC in the hashtag resistance. There's nothing brave about running into the arms of, the biggest media apparatus in this country. Now, compare and contrast that. If you're a Republican who turns out to be anti-Trump, that's super lucrative. Compare that to the opposite. Compare that to a left-winger who dissents from Biden like myself. Are there giant CNN and MSNBC contracts waiting for me? Is there a giant book deal waiting for me for being somebody who's on the left, technically a registered Democrat, who's saying, I don't know, man, it'd be tough for me to vote for Biden? Is that lucrative? No, of course not. There's no incentives pushing me in that way, so it's just a matter of principle and conviction and ideology as to why I'm struggling with the idea of voting for somebody like Joe Biden. But for a guy like Jeff Flake, and for all these Republicans who dissented from Trump, they know that they can run into the open arms of the hashtag resistance, and the resistance will wipe away all of their former crimes, all of their, the wars they voted for, their, torture apologetics, their right-wing economic views. He just said Jeff Flake had like 100% conservative voting record. Right, so why are you holding up as if he's some kind of hero? Aren't you against the conservative voting record as such? Turns out no. To guys like Chris Cillizza, because he's a bird brain, it's all about optics. Oh, he stood up against Trump, so now I like him, yeah. Now, the other thing is, the Republicans who do not break with Trump and stay with Trump, I would submit to Chris Cillizza that he's half right. Because yes, many of them are doing it cynically because they want to win re-election. Okay, so I will grant him that. He's half right on that front. But he's also half wrong. So what do I mean by that? Well, a guy like Lindsey Graham, who was one of the biggest, critics of Trump in the Republican Party back when he was running for president and right when he dropped out and stuff. One of the reasons why he's now one of Trump's biggest supporters is actually not just political convenience and he wants to get reelected. It's also ideology. See, when Donald Trump was running, he was saying he's going to get us out of the wars. That's when Lindsey Graham was most aggressive against Trump. He was also acting like he was going to be a protectionist on economics. And Lindsey Graham does not agree with protectionism. He does not agree with ending wars. In fact, those are probably his two biggest issues. He believes in all these endless wars and American leadership, he would say. And he believes in, the current economic status quo of free trade all around the world and all these jobs being outsourced. He thinks that's a lot better than so-called protectionism, which, is honestly more of a left position. So those are his two biggest issues. Trump was acting like he was going to be a protectionist on economics, and he was acting like he was going to be against the wars and pull us out. Well, guess what? Trump as president is basically a standard Republican. We're still in the war in Iraq. We're still in the war in Afghanistan. He increased the drone strikes 432%. He's on the brink of war with Venezuela. He's on the brink of war with Iran. He pulled out of the deal and ripped up the agreement. So he's standard neoconservative on foreign policy in terms of his actions, with one exception in North Korea. Okay, everywhere else he's a neocon. And then when it comes to economics, there are little areas here and there where he dissented from the orthodoxy and, trying to do some sort of a standing up to China thing with protectionism on that front, but kind of backed down a few times. But mostly, Trump's economic philosophy is really embodied with that 2017 GOP tax cut law, which is standard Republican orthodoxy, which is trickle-down economics, which is just like George W. Bush. Add on top of that, deregulation, gutting the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So what happened with Lindsey Graham is not just, oh, I want to get reelected, so I'm going to go down that path of, you know, being a sycophant to Trump. No. Also, what happened was Lindsey Graham realized, oh, the rhetoric on the campaign trail was just rhetoric. Trump actually agrees with me ideologically. He's a standard right-winger. He's a standard establishment Republican on most issues, so now I'm going to become one of his biggest defenders because I agree with that. So, in other words, he's painting all the ones who agree with Trump as like, oh, they're just doing it because they want to get reelected. No, a lot of the Republicans who are still in lockstep with Trump are also doing it, not just because they want to get reelected, although that's a big part of it. They also agree with his standard establishment Republican politics. Why is that so hard to grasp? A guy like Mitt Romney, funny enough, who he would say is a hero, the only reason why Mitt Romney is dissenting from Trump is because Trump made a fool of him when he made him try out to become Secretary of State, and then he didn't give him Secretary of State. And there's that hilarious picture of them at a dinner with Trump making an evil face and Mitt Romney making a puppy dog face like, what am I doing? I'm degrading myself. So Mitt Romney standing up to Donald Trump, I think that has more to do, nothing with ideology at all. That has to do with, you know, Mitt Romney feeling personally slighted, so he's standing up to Trump. So it's funny because my main point here is, guys, generally speaking, when you look at the Republicans who are following along with Trump, and when you look at the Republicans who are dissenting from Trump, there are no heroes. None of them are heroes. None of them are heroes. There's a little bit of ideology mixed in as to why they're doing what they're doing, but mostly they're all, you know, looking for the path of least resistance and looking to get the most pats on the back and looking for the most adulation and you know, doing what they view best for their careers. So this myth of like you got the Trump Republicans and the good Republicans, I need that to die. Because you have a guy like George W. Bush who stood up to Trump a bunch of times, but George W. Bush is a goddamn war criminal torturer. So don't, like, they want to rehabilitate everybody who's a Republican who doesn't like fall in line with Trump, and that just shows you how much of a bird brain he is. That he's not analyzing this in terms of ideology or substantively. He's doing it like a high schooler. Like he's a high school nerd looking at what's happening with the popular kids, and he's trying to describe the dynamic, and it's like, you just have no clue what the hell you're talking about, and that's obvious.